Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that examines the wide world of cinema through our perpetually lefty pinko commie soy boy cuck Antifa super soldier filter. But more specifically, we love movies and want to create a podcast that would appeal to the disparate tastes of our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Red Rose Film Club is for leftists of all stripes who don't know what to talk about at parties other than movies and politics. My name is Craig. I work in public education and am passionate about social justice and workers' rights. And I'm with...
Hey, I'm Hal. In 2024, I'm switching it up and taking it back to the basics. I'm a socialist trying to grapple with our world by reflecting on it through art, theory, and the will of the people. So, Craig.
Yes?
What other pop culture are you getting into these days?
I saw some fun stuff and some interesting stuff. First off, I saw for the first time ever, like in a live theater setting, Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I'd seen before, but never been, in a live setting screening with all the throwing of things and hollering and shouting. So a local bar, Fire Betty's, did a screening of it, and they hand you like a sack of crap, which which was which was kind of funny because like we got to the end. And there was still like half the things in the bag. And the woman who was hosting it was like, yeah, I don't know when you're supposed to do this. So everybody just throw it now. And we're like, okay. So that was the toilet paper part.
That is certainly an approach.
Yeah.
Did you participate in a virgin indoctrination or whatever they call? Usually there's something at the beginning where you've never seen it live before.
There was no indoctrination process other than her just asking who had never seen it before. So there was no
missed opportunities. It's supposed to be an opportunity for public humiliation, etc.
Damn. Well, I wouldn't have stood up. So, but it was fun. I will say that the girl who sat right in front of me did not get the memo that the rice needs to go up. And it just could not have been more of just a direct, I'm going to throw rice in this guy's face. Like she just goes, bam, and hit me without and I found rice in my hair the next day when I was at work. I was like, what the hell? And I a couple pieces came out, but it was fun. It was cool.
A tactile experience.
It was. It really was.
A 4D.
Then I saw one that I didn't like that much and one that I did like a lot. I'm trying to make you in suspense. The one that I didn't like as much was Wolves. Which,
is that the Clooney pit?
Yes. That is basically, they're like, hey, don't you like how those guys have a lot of chemistry in the Ocean's 11 movie?
I do. Yes.
What if we did that, but there's nothing else holding this together? It's just these two guys that we all like, and they're just not even being that clever or funny. I don't know. It's boring.
It's missing the Soderbergh touch.
Yeah, there's just no sauce to it. They're just like, I don't know. It's like basically they're both cleaners, for big wigs and whatnot.
They're maids. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought you said a different word at first, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I guess that means that's part of the whatever a cleaner is or a wolf. But no, they're like cleaners, like Hollywood fixers or whatever. And they both get booked to help the same politician cover up some fucked up shit that happened. And then it's just those two kind of just near each other for a while, doing that hey, kind of bro-y Ocean's 11 talk. It's just boring. So yeah, didn't and it's directed by John Watts, who's a guy that I have liked in the past. He's also done some garbage. I think he did those he did the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans, which are bad, but he also did a really cool movie called Cop Car.
I don't know that I share that opinion.
Oh, do you not? Okay. Well, apologies to all the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man Spider fans. But he did a movie called Cop Car that I really like. Have you seen Cop Car?
I have not.
Oh, it's cool. It's just kind of a gritty thriller. It's Kevin Bacon plays a small town fucked up cop who does something fucked up, and two boys witness it. And it's kind of a cat and mouse of these boys trying to not basically be murdered by this cop. But it's fun. But yeah, Wolves was disappointing. But then I saw The Substance, which is fucking awesome. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I will say that I don't have any qualms with it. But if I did, I would say things that I don't like in a movie, I could definitely are made up for by audaciousness. So like by the end of the movie, I was like, well, fuck you. I don't care. Like the first like hour and a half could have just been dog shit. These last 20 minutes are just so like audacious and bold and weird that I'm like, this is the best movie ever. I loved it. It was awesome.
It rips.
Yeah, it's so gross. And also this might lead us into a conversation about the movie we're going to talk about in general. But one thing like criticism I've seen about The Substance from like a couple different people that I also was like reading old reviews of the movie we're going to talk about is that like knocking it because the themes are too on the nose or too like surface level, which I think is kind of dumb. I don't know. Cause if it's, I don't know, you can have like, if the theme is, I guess the knock that I saw was like too much like, Hollywood. Yeah. You gotta be beautiful. Like that kind of thing, which like, yeah, that is the theme, but I don't know when it's executed really well and it's interesting and it's fun and it's like, new, like who cares if the theme is something that's been touched on before or on the nose or whatever.
I think that for me, I tend to return to a piece of advice. I think I've brought this up previously, but my former now defunct dissertation advisor Dina Rollinger once said to me that you should judge something by what it's trying to be or do. She was talking about in the context of reviewing a book for an academic journal. But I think it's relevant for film. And I'm going to compare The Substance on this particular critique to a movie that I have recently leveled the same critique, which is I saw the TV Glow, and why I think it's relevant there and not relevant with The Substance is that The Substance is trying to be big, bold, brash, and is leading with its spectacle. Yeah,
that's kind of, to me, the whole point is that like we're going to take a theme that you've definitely seen before, but we're going to show it to you in a way you've never fucking seen before. And that is in itself like an artistic of artistic merit, I think.
Right. Whereas in contrast, in my opinion, I saw the TV Glow. Impact is intended to be, at least in part, its emotionality and its over explanation of its emotional themes make me feel alienated from them. I
get that. I also watched that in the last couple weeks since we've recorded. And I get that. Yeah, I liked it. Okay. But I did feel it was.
Yeah, it's not that I dislike it. It just felt like I think a really standout example of what I'm talking about is the scene where the character is standing and monologuing and there are these beautiful projections of constellations and the sky like whipping past their face. And what they are saying is explaining the entire fucking movie to you. And it just totally blows all of the dramatic tension and the nuances that it has drawn out for you.
And that also just makes you feel like when movies do that they don't trust the audience to
Whereas The Substance is not asking for any trust in the first place. It's just slapping you.
Oh God. And I was like kept being like, well, this has to be the pinnacle of this movie, right? Like this is as gross as this is gonna get, and then it just gets grosser, and it's like, awesome. Also, like, I know Demi Moore is great in it, but Margaret Qualley is fucking awesome in it. I have liked her for a while, but haven't seen her in much. Did you watch The Leftovers?
Yes.
She was the daughter in The Leftovers, and I always loved her in that. And then, I don't know, I know she's been around here and there, but she's great in The Substance.
This year, she's definitely demonstrating what a Nepo baby can do. Because she was also in Kinds of Kindness, and I thought she was one of the. I quite enjoyed that movie, but thought she was a notable standout. And I think she's the kind of performer where the more movies that she's in, the more I appreciate her performances in the movies I've already seen. Because she continues to demonstrate range, and there are some things like in Kinds of Kindness, for example, or even in The Substance. She plays, if you had no other exposure to her, she plays a kind of femininity that you could simply like just project on her as like a rich white woman. But the mosaic of all of them together really demonstrates that no, she is acting. And,
she's great. Yeah.
There's dimensionality to those performances.
And in The Substance, how she goes from kind of like intentionally like wooden and stiff and just kind of like the ideal, like obviously what the movie is, like the ideal version of this character. And then the more like things spiral out of control, like we get to see more of her kind of pushed out of that. And she's great. She's great. I also am reading a book that I wanted to talk about.
Reading, okay.
I'm smart.
Big shot.
What's up? I found this book at a bookstore like years ago, and it's been on my shelf for forever.
It's a classic.
I finally started reading it, but it is The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein.
It's a little light reading.
Hell yeah. Which I am quite enjoying. You've read it before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For those that might not know it, it's Naomi Klein's journalist that wrote this book called The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism, essentially about how the U.S. uses disasters or anything that upends the status quo, thinking 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, and things before and since, but uses that as the pretext to then go in and rewrite laws and policies, usually towards more less social programs, more like privatization, specifically focusing on like the war in Iraq. And she draws a very interesting parallel to that, like the way that they use that to kind of shock the system into like complacency and then introduce something new. She compares that to the way that like torture in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places kind of goes for the same effect of like shocking the body, basically reducing you down to like level 0 and then rebuilding how you want it.
Yeah, it's her taking quotidian theory, like the idea that the quotidian has to be disrupted in order for social change to occur. But then understanding how that can be a tool of neoliberalism. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and it's great. I'm about a third of the way through probably, but I really, really like it. Yeah, and then my last one.
I was just going to say Naomi Klein, not to be confused with Naomi Wolf.
The crazy anti-vaxxer. Is that what you were? Not yet. Not Naomi Wolf.
Not Naomi Wolf, the psycho.
Damn, did you ever see that video where she gets corrected in real time on
about her misinterpreting death records?
Yes, yeah, that is so good. It's one of the best.
I'm embarrassed to say that I've read The Beauty Myth.
Is that one of her? Well, she used to be like fairly respected, right? And then COVID kind of turned her into a.
I mean, the whole thing about the misunderstanding that there are other things that like reverberate backwards. Like once it was clear that she was losing her mind. But yes, at some point in time, she was respected as kind of like a feminist writer who was not like of the academy, right, but adjacent to it, you know, like kind of a Jessica Valenti. Now, Jessica Valenti is amazing. And I don't mean a negative comparison there at all, but just that there was a period of time that they were kind of like a similar class of public feminist. But then Naomi Wolf started thinking that COVID was fake and that she could make up her own interpretations of death records to say things about, I believe, homosexual men being murdered is what I recall was the context of that.
Yeah, that rings a bell. Who was she? Who was that interview with where she looks like such a fucking idiot?
I don't remember.
I can't remember, but it was great. I don't know. I just love a good moron on display, and that was a good one. That was up there.
Quite a trajectory she's had. So what is the non-movie, non-book?
The non-movie, non-book thing that I want to talk about is Vic Berger released a new video called The Phantom of Mar-a-Lago, which if you're familiar with Vic Berger, he's the guy that, you know, he doesn't do them hardly at all anymore. But in the 2016 election cycle, and especially, he was the guy that would release like a ton of hilarious edits of weird politicians being weird, but then added on with his hilarious edits. Well, he released this one, which I'm sorry to bring up because I realize now it's not easy to watch because it is it's on the Chapo Trap House Patreon. So you have to be like behind a paywall.
Get richer.
Say what? The rich get richer. Yeah, for sure. But it is really funny. Like, so one of Trump's redeeming qualities is how much of a like New York Broadway queen he is. Like, he just loves musicals. And Phantom.
I'm gonna talk about that.
Okay, cool. And Phantom of the Opera, like if you like go over time, he's mentioned it a lot. So there are videos of that, but more of what the video is how, like, since he left office, he has kind of turned himself into the Phantom of the Opera of Mar-a-Lago, of like trapping himself in this mansion with people he clearly like despises or gets annoyed by, that like are just sycophants and weirdos. And it's just like a hilarious, it's like 30 minutes, but just a really funny snapshot of him both like trying to play to the sycophants that are just milling about Mar-a-Lago, but also him clearly hating them and being annoyed at the same time, all framed around his love of Phantom of the Opera, which is really funny.
Does he shop a mask on his face?
He does. Vic does Photoshop a mask for the thumbnail, not in the actual video, but yes, he does Photoshop a mask on Trump's face. And the
respect.
Yeah, it's good. But what about you? What have you been getting into lately?
Well, I have a couple of books I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about The Apprentice, which is why I made reference to returning to Trump being a queen.
Oh yeah.
But first, I finished When the Clock Broke by John Gans. I brought this up in a previous episode. Forget the full subtitle, but about like con men and conspiracies and what fucked up shit was happening in the 90s. And I prefaced this. I try and avoid being defensive, but as a preface to this, if you're extremely online, you probably know people are really mad at John Gans because of what he said about Palestine. I'm not talking about that right now. He sucks.
Oh,
like,
shit.
he's not right. I want to talk about this book. So I think Craig, that you would, as I recommended the first time I talked about this, think that you would quite like this book because it is a like kind of journalistic history of cranks and conservative doorknobs from the late 80s up through the 90s.
Oh yeah.
And its pretense is establishing like the thread that unfrayed or that unwound or frayed and led to Trump. Mm-hmm. Right. I find the book to be, which maybe does connect with the dumb shit he was saying about Palestine, under theorized. At the very end, he makes some arguments. He being John Gans makes some arguments about how conservatives, in particular, he talks about Samuel Francis, who was kind of like a William Buckley intellectual figure of the far right, who was, I think, the editor of the Chronicle. But how he talks about wanting to engage in the production of a counter hegemony in the way that Gramsci like puts forth as a charge for the left to do. And I just wish that was introduced at the beginning and then picked up throughout, because it kind of just feels like he's like plopping it in there at the end. And I think it could be making stronger arguments. But there's a lot of interesting stuff, in particular as someone who is like 33 and is very interested in histories of the right and histories of the conservative movement in the United States. I just didn't know a lot about Ross Perot. Like, he just kind of like, I knew who he was. I knew the SNL bit. We talked about this last time, but there's just a lot drawn out with how he basically was like a Rick Scott-esque figure who made all of his money off of defrauding Medicare and Medicaid, that I was glad to learn more about, to be able to see how those pieces are reflected contemporarily. But I think it's worth picking up if you're interested in history of the right and of conservative movements. But expect a journalistic history, not something that is like advancing an argument. Then the other book I wanted to bring up is I am very close to being done with Manhunt by Gretchen Feltner Martin. I was not going to bring this up. I was going to wait till I finished it. And so for like next time we record, but Last week, Lily Wachowski announced that she's making a television series of it. So I wanted to bring it up now while people are maybe thinking about it. If you're not familiar, it is a kind of sci-fi-ish horror novel about a dystopian United States in which a disease that strikes people with XY chromosomes, like turns them into like literal monsters, like raping, violent, horrible, deformed monsters. And it's about a group of trans women and their allies who are trying to basically stave off the disease and survive while the dominant stronghold and like emergent militia in the northeastern United States where it takes place outside of Boston, is a group of TERFs who are like an actual militia and like tattoo XX on them and stuff. And I was not a major fan. In fact, I bought this book, I think whenever this book came out, which was easily over a year ago. Might have been 2 years ago. I read the first like 20 pages of it and I was like, actually, I'm not liking this. And I set it down, didn't pick it back up again until late this summer. Then I read like 20 more pages of it and I was like, nope, I'm still not liking it. And I set it down. And a couple of weeks ago, I picked it up and was like, okay, I'm gonna finish it. And then I'm glad that I did because
that sounds awesome.
They're making it into a TV show. And I actually think the making it into a TV show speaks to my critique of it, which is that it's not, I don't think it's terribly well written. But I think it will make a great television show. And the reason why I think it's not terribly well written, in fact, actually the latter half of the book where the action kicks up, I think is quite well written. The setting up of it feels very internet brained. Like people talk to each other in ways that I do not want to read. And I just simply am not interested in reading in a book. And sometimes she'll write things like there was a sentence a couple of nights ago I read, I wish I had pulled it out, but where she is describing a character entering a room and she's like, and they looked across the apartment, saw the bedroom, then the kitchen, the bathroom or whatever. Like that is the sentence. It says like, or whatever period. And I was like, I am a 33-year-old. I don't wish to read that personally. It's a little adolescent. But there's some really cool ideas in it. And once the action kicks up, it gets ferocious and nasty in a way that I respect. So I look forward to watching the show when Lily Wachowski makes it.
So is Lily Wachowski not doing it with, I can't remember her sister's name, but...
No, it was just listed. It was like an interview with Lily where she is talking about like, I am making this. I just got approval. Or, that she was able to get the rights and is working on it with Gretchen Faulkner Martin. Have
they worked separately before?
I'm not sure.
I think maybe the last Matrix movie was only...
Did they?
Lily, maybe? No, that can't be right. I thought Sense8 was both of them.
I don't recall, but she was not saying like me and my sister. It was like, I am doing this.
Me and Tom Tickfer. I think they made Cloud Atlas with Tom Tickfer.
Whoever that was should stay away from this.
Oh, I like Cloud Atlas.
I
want to whisper it. Out of shame.
Okay, what I'm hearing is you like Yellow Face.
Well, that part is regrettable for sure.
I'm just kidding. But I can just absolutely see like an HBO, right? Like, or Max, whatever, prestige television series being constructed out of this. But I will know if you pick it up, if you decide to read it, it is very nasty and vile. Like there is a lot of gushy, gory, sick stuff in it. And if you don't like reading something that very clearly was written by someone that spends too much time on Twitter, I also recommend maybe you wait for the TV show.
Oh, yeah. Or whatever.
Or whatever. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is I saw The Apprentice.
Yeah, I want to hear about this.
Yeah, so that's the 2024 release, directed by Ali Abbasi, who directed Holy Spider, which is how I was convinced to see this movie. I mean, a friend was like, I want to see this movie. And I was like, I don't know. I could be convinced to go. And then I looked it up and I saw that he directed it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go. You know? Yeah. Sebastian Stan plays Donald Trump. And then really, I mean, he's quite good in it, I would say. But really the standout is Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Okay, because I don't know anything about this other than it's about Donald Trump, but I was going to ask what era. So we're talking 80s?
Mostly is the very late 70s, 80s, and then the 80s.
Yeah.
And it is not exclusively, but primarily about their relationship.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yes. It was so much better than I anticipated it would be. And I think that it is the only version of this movie that could be respectably made now and specifically released like approximately a month before the election. Obviously, at this point in time, we're now further than a month. We're closer than a month to the election. But at the time it came out, a month away from the election, because it is clearly about the implications of his like professional socialization experiences and his relationship with Roy Cohn and his relationship with his father and all of these things and how that comes to bear on who he becomes. But I think it maintains just enough distance from who he becomes that it doesn't feel like it's waiting, like it's trying to like, I don't know. It's not a fucking Adam McKay movie.
Right. Yeah. Where it's
so I will say it, right? It doesn't feel like it's letting the content of the film be self-evident as opposed to saying like
winking,
get a load of this guy.
Yeah, winking the whole time. And Covfefe.
Yeah. I will note.
That would be the Adam McKay version. That would be the title. Covfefe.
The drink of fascists. I will say that the movie is grimier, grittier, and more explicit than I anticipated.
Oh, cool.
Like there is a graphic rape scene in it that I don't think is easily telegraphed either. Like I was not, and the direction the scene goes is not what I was expecting. So that, you know, viewer beware in terms of that. But I was like pretty solidly impressed by the film, and it's directed in a very like splashy, dynamic way. The music is very like pressing and in your face. It's more stylish than I anticipated, even having seen his previous feature.
Hell yeah. And the Sebastian Stan, he's having a year because that other movie I really want to see that I've now forgot the name of. A Normal Man.
A Different Man.
Different Man. There we go. Yeah. Which I don't know anything about, but it looks cool as shit. And it's got the dude from, it's got the guy from, I don't remember his name, but he was in Under the Skin.
Yeah. Adam Pearson?
Adam Pearson.
I think is his name.
But I really want to see that. But yeah, hell yeah, I'm excited because I knew nothing about that. I couldn't tell if it was going to be schlocky like that Adam McKay style or what you described, and I'm stoked to see it.
Yeah,
is it in theaters?
It was when we saw it 2 weeks ago. Sunday, a week and a half ago.
So probably not anymore.
So probably not. But I do think it is worth a watch. I would just like brace yourself. It is not a movie that is making fun of itself. It's not irony pilled. I think it is being earnest about the way it depicts his viciousness. And so it's like not a pleasant watch necessarily, right? Like that's not what you're getting out of it. It's like, oh, this is a rip roaring good time.
Right.
Yeah.
Also say, because I think I mentioned this on the last episode, maybe, but I was supposed to see Terrifier 3. We had our tickets. And then my wife got sick and we couldn't go, but we're going next week. And I'm very excited because I've heard it's disgusting and a lot of fun. So I
look forward to the update on that because I certainly will not be seeing it.
Have you seen any of them?
No, it's not. If I am going to, and it's not like an objection to, obviously, I've talked many times about loving disgusting, gory things. but I'm not necessarily interested in something that's exclusively driven in that way.
Yeah.
And if it is, I think I just prefer something that is like more explicitly funny.
Yeah, I would say there is like humor to the gore, I think, in the Terrifier franchises. Like some of it is just straight up awful and like horrific.
Yeah,
but
I mean like Final Destination is what I mean. Level of like absurdity in it. Because otherwise I'm just going to watch a Fulci film. Like if I'm going to watch something that's we're just doing like bloodbath shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch something from the 70s or 80s is going to be my preference. Also, I'm not afraid of clowns, but I just don't care for them very much.
I get that. Jess, my wife, used to be terrified. And honestly, I think it was Terrifier that got her like, all right, this is fun. I like this.
I like that. Terrifier is exposure therapy.
Actually, that's going to come back up when we talk about Wes Craven and my wife and exposure therapy.
My wife. Okay, I didn't do it the first time. I didn't do it the second time. The third time I had to do it to him.
So sorry.
Well, now for something in the exact opposite tonal direction.
Yeah.
In this occasion, because I saw what Craig wanted to talk about, and it was what I was going to talk about. So, Craig, why don't you take it away talking about something that's got you? I'm just going to cut out the celebrating, living in despair.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry to do this again, but I want to talk about the brutalities happening to Palestinians currently. I mentioned this in the last episode, but this past week has brought new horrors and an indelible image that represents this genocide. I'm going to describe a horrific war atrocity. So if you don't want to hear that, please fast forward just a little bit. A young man named Shaban al-Dalu became a martyr in the war on Palestine last week. Shaban was 19 years old, living in Gaza and going to school to become a software engineer when the war broke out last year. Shaban and his family, his parents and 4 siblings, have been repeatedly displaced by the Israeli attacks on Gaza. Several weeks ago, both Shaban and his mother were injured in an Israeli attack. The al-Dalu family sought refuge at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, an under-equipped refuge for displaced Gazans. A week ago Sunday, Israel launched a series of airstrike attacks, including one on a school, one on a flower distribution site, and one at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, teeming with already displaced Palestinians. The bombing of the Al-Aqsa Hospital caused a large fire to break out and enveloped many of the tents and the patients inside. A video of the fire shows Shaban al-Dalu with an IV drip still in his arm, tethering him to his hospital bed while he burned alive. His mother, in the bed next to him, also burned to death. Shaban and his mother were buried together in each other's embrace.
I also want to say in like the last 48 hours, there's also been reporting that Democracy Now! Is doing that one of his 2 younger brothers also died, like was injured in this and hadn't died immediately, but has subsequently died. So at least 3 of their family members were killed.
Yeah. So please sit with this terrible information while I read the Biden administration's response without further commentary, because this mealy-mouthed fucking pathetic response speaks for itself. Quote, "The images and videos of what appear to be displaced civilians burning alive following an Israeli airstrike are deeply disturbing, and we have made our concerns clear to the Israeli government. Israel has a responsibility to do more to avoid civilian casualties, and what happened here is horrifying, even if Hamas was operating near the hospital in an attempt to use civilians as human shields." So all that to say, just rest in peace to Shaban al-Dalu, who died 2 days before his 20th birthday. And let me end this segment with the words of Ahmad al-Dalu, Shaban's father, who watched helplessly as his oldest son and wife burned to death. "We are people that only ask for peace and freedom. We want basic rights, nothing else. May God take care of our oppressors." That's all I got for that. So don't know if you wanted to add to it or just move along, but it's fucked up and awful and terrible and yeah.
Yeah, I just say I was thinking about something I've been thinking about a lot recently as it relates to Palestine and the death of so many civilians is how sometimes television, the airing of footage on television is attributed or is like a significant part of what ending the eventual war, the U.S. losing the war in Vietnam, right, is like attributed to this idea that like people saw the horrors and it woke them up. And I think there are a lot of social movement scholars that have argued that that's not necessarily accurate. And that a lot of that obviously has to do with having a population in the United States, i.e. young men who could be drafted, college, and people who are adjacent to them, like college students who mobilized because they had direct investment and had some leverage in the U.S. government, right? Like they weren't going to go. They were going to disrupt this process of war. And I've just been thinking about this in the context of all of these social media images of the horrors and thinking like, what is the capacity for this to make a difference? And is there still latent potential in these images to invoke change and for these deaths to mean something in terms of the their evocative power? Or are we like not able to convert that into something because we don't have the same kind of leverage and stakeholders here? Like the young people, all of us witnessing this, don't have the same relationship to the state and to this conflict as young people did in the 1960s and 70s to Vietnam. I don't say that to be pessimistic, but it's just something I am wrestling with and trying to see like historical comparisons and what is the same and what is different and what is, possibly transferable. Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't have a conclusion on. Just shout out. Message me on fucking Twitter if you have some ideas about what I just said. Because I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Want to add to the pessimism, but at this point, like, I don't know what will. It's hard to think of anything more horrific than that. As far as like videos that could come out and possibly change people's minds about anything. So like, I just feel really, I do feel really pessimistic and just bummed out because like, what the fuck? What else? I can't conjure anything more horrible than that video and countless videos that have come out before that and since. And it's just so fucking sad to just see us in this just repeated pattern of like something awful happens. Oh, I wish they wouldn't have done that from the, administration in charge. And then a week later, something awful happens again. And we're just stuck in this terrible, terrible pattern until what? I guess all the Palestinians are dead. Is that seems to be the end goal here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that we, and by we, I don't like necessarily mean you and I, right? But people that can't abide by what's happening have to identify like what's the cost that the U.S. government's not willing to pay. So again, sound off.
Yeah, honestly,
sound off if you've got some more thoughts about that aren't just about voting. Yeah. You can rant about that as well, but yeah. So horrible things being horrible.
Yeah. Might need like a music zinger in there to give us a little transition from that to this.
Benny Hill. No.
Oh, I got it. Basketball. Oh shit, that was before we started recording. Damn it. Damn it. We were talking about some really stupid song before we started recording and I forgot that wasn't being recorded.
Ooh. Basketball. Dunk it.
But would we like to move on to our conversation proper?
I mean, I figured we might as well because that's what we're here for.
Cool. So today we're going to talk about Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs, a horror comedy romp that serves an allegory for the ongoing housing crisis in America. But let's do what we always do and set the table for our discussion by discussing the political machinations that led to the housing crisis and to the themes of this movie. It all starts with one of the sexier federal agencies, Woo-hoo. HUD, Housing and Urban Development. HUD was created in 1965, originally a JFK initiative that was developed and brought to fruition under Lyndon Johnson following Kennedy's assassination. And HUD, as we know it, actually consolidated 5 other government programs into a singular agency, giving the federal government the power to tackle homelessness and substandard housing, especially in urban areas. Those 5 other agencies were
the Federal Housing Administration, which was originally created in 1934 in response to the Great Depression, meant to encourage homeownership among first-time home buyers. The Public Housing Administration, which was created in 1937, giving the federal government the power to oversee public housing. The Federal National Mortgage Association, also known as Fannie Mae, was also created in 1937 in order to build up a secondary housing market. The Urban Renewal Administration was created just after World War II with the intent to clean up slums and deteriorating urban neighborhoods. And then finally, the Community Facilities Administration, which, as the HUD's website explains, was established to oversee a variety of community development programs, such as city planning grants, student and employee housing aid for hospitals and colleges, and mass transit grants.
And it worked pretty damn well. In the 1960s, the median home cost was $11,900, while the median income was $5,600. That's a 2-to-1 price to income ratio. Keep that number in mind and we'll revisit it in a bit. Though there was definitely still a lot of issues with housing in America in the 1960s, especially if you were black and trying to buy a home in, say, Chicago or any city plagued by redlining and racist housing policies, the creation of HUD largely did what it was intended to do in 2 major areas: regulate the housing market and oversee public housing. Over the next 15 years, global events like the Vietnam War and the recession of the early 70s led to an increase in homelessness. But that's exactly what HUD was created for, right? A government agency whose entire purpose was meant to respond to external forces manipulating the housing market and protect Americans from homelessness, right? Right? Well, enter once again Ronald fucking Reagan and his putrid little wormtongue Milton Friedman. We discussed these 2 fucking cretins in our last episode as well, but let's dive into how these 2 ghouls reshaped the housing market, leading to the untenable housing crisis we find ourselves in today.
Milton Friedman, vaunted economic professor at the Chicago School and the warmiest little shit you ever did see, believed in an extreme laissez-faire approach to government assistance, which is to say, Friedman believed that the government should almost never introduce regulation, and instead the invisible hand of capitalism would address poverty. A quality, he intoned, was inefficient. Freedom acts as a filter, and private charity should fill in the gaps. So Reagan's solution to the recent rise in homelessness was to remove government oversight altogether and give the private sector more leverage in buying and selling houses. And what about housing the already homeless? Reagan saw that as a problem not for the government to address, but for you and those in your community. In a speech in 1981 at the Waldorf Astoria, which is a great place to give a speech about people experiencing housing insecurity, Reagan outlined this dead brain theory.
Well, that's I can only do a Reagan impression for one word. Well, I'm introducing the cabinet to review agency procedures and regulations and identify barriers to private sector involvement. I'm also asking the cabinet to develop pump priming and seed money programs that offer incentives for private sector investment. In addition, the cabinet will provide technical knowledge to develop private incentives. Furthermore, existing programs will be examined to determine those which could be more productively carried out in the private sector. Voluntarism is an essential part of our plan to give the government back to the people. I believe the people are anxious for this responsibility. I believe they want to be enlisted in this cause. We have an unprecedented opportunity in America in the days ahead to build on our past traditions and the raw resources within our people. We can show the world how to construct a social system more humane, more compassionate, and more effective in meeting its members' needs than any ever known.
You know who knows about pump priming? Nancy Reagan.
That's what I thought, but I thought it was going to be an easier land coming from you. So.
The second you said that, I was Nancy, like, I gotta get a throat coat.
Can't leave her in the room alone in the Oval Office.
In short, Reagan's economic policy was to not just give control of the housing market to the private sector, but to subsidize it for them as well, all the while shifting the burden of preventing homelessness and the conditions that lead to it onto the American people. And since the 1980s, the housing market and homelessness has only skyrocketed. Remember that 2-to-1 ratio of housing cost to average income? That ratio is now closer to 3.5-to-1, meaning that while the prices of homes are exponentially increasing, the average American income is not. Whereas some economists and sociologists in the 1960s suggested that homelessness may disappear forever in America. At the beginning of 2023, the homelessness rate in America was 19.4 for every 10,000 people. And the houses, they're still there, but put in the hands of the private sector with little to no oversight. Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman have accomplished their goals as a tier of the mega rich control the majority of the housing market. But what about us? Here's some statistics from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition to mull over. The U.S. is short nearly 7 million affordable homes for low-income families. On any given night, nearly 600,000 Americans are experiencing homelessness. 70% of all low-income families in America pay over half of their income for rent. Only 1 in 4 low-income families in need of assistance receive any. And we know that these phenomena are racialized. A 2024 study by the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University found that people of color who rent are more likely to live in inadequate housing that has structural issues such as absent or damaged plumbing, electricity, or heat.
And this is Ronald Reagan's legacy. But leave it to our beloved Wes Craven to take a topic so infuriating and ugly and turn it into a rollicking horror flick with an acerbic take on the monstrosity that Reagan unleashed. The People Under the Stairs sees a young kid living in an urban slum threatened with eviction by wealthy slumlords in an attempt to gentrify the neighborhood. When the young protagonist, known as the Fool, finds out that the rich fucks pushing him and his mother out of their house supposedly have riches and gold stashed away, he teams up with 2 low-level crooks to steal the treasure and pay for his mother's cancer treatment. But once inside, the Fool discovers the rich couple, known as Mommy and Daddy, have even darker secrets lingering inside the walls of their house. We watched Wes Craven's absolute fucking banger from 1991, The People Under the Stairs. Let's talk about it. First things first, how did you like it? I believe you said on the last one, this is your first time seeing it?
Yes, I had never seen it before. Oh, yeah. It was not what I expected.
Me too. I remember that.
Yeah,
being my first.
I didn't know that it was a horror comedy, which I do like in general, like as a category, as a genre. There are some things I really liked about this. I loved the kind of like prologue, like the setting the scene for him being the Fool and using the tarot cards as a like structuring element. I thought Ving Rhames fucking awesome. We'll talk about in a few minutes, but he has some great lines. There was one of them that caused Mike, who was on the other side of the house, to come running out to be like, what did he just say?
I want to guess which one it was.
Okay.
I think I'll do it when we get there. Yeah.
And there are elements of like almost a like youthful adventure film. Like the way that the Fool can kind of like, he's really clever and he can like jump and
like the Goonies.
Yes, it does have. I was thinking of Hook is kind of what it was evoking for me. But yes, Goonies, absolutely. I don't know that I like love this movie on the whole, aside from those things.
I love this movie. I remember I had a similar reaction. This is probably the second time I've seen it. And I remember a similar reaction the first time I saw it, and that I only remember this when I was a kid seeing the movie box at the movie store, which was like the house with a big fucking like scary skull just in the like hovering over the house. And I was like, oh damn, that looks scary as hell. So when I watched it the first time, I was like, man, this is gonna be like fucked up and weird. And then it is fucked up and weird, but not at all in the way that I had thought, because it is like silly and like goofy in parts. There's like whole like Home Alone sequences of like booby traps and shit that I'm never going to age out of that. I don't think. I think anytime a movie has like booby traps and that's like integral to the plot, I'm like, well, this is the best movie ever. I love this movie. I love a booby trap movie.
Yeah, those are some of the parts of the movie I really liked. Yeah. I think that contrasted with the allegory it's engaged in is where it like loses me a little bit.
Yeah, it
because
is.
the incestuous siblings who are exploiting the black folks around them through rent and owning the liquor store. And then there's ghosts in the wall and kids are. It's just there's a lot going on in this movie. But enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a wild ride for sure. Well, let's start walking through the plot. And at the beginning, we meet his name, and I've already forgotten his real name. He's known mostly as the
Poindexter.
Fool. Poindexter, that's right. He says it later. It is very cute. And yes, did you jot down the kid's name, the actor's name?
I have it
because it is the boy from
Brandon Adams,
who plays. Oh, I almost could pull it from
Kenny
the Sandlot.
Kenny.
I was going to say he's but that's a different kid.
Yeah.
But he's Kenny in the Sandlot, and this is a few years before that. So okay, they say he's 13, but this kid, he does not look 13. He looks like.
I mean, you would know as a middle school teacher. I'm like everyone under the age of 15. I'm like, I don't know. Like you could be like teenagers. I have a better read on, but like if you're like 9 to 15, it
may as well just be any age.
Rough. And also people hit puberty at different times, so it's just like Yeah.
Well, he looks extremely young, but he is like 12 going on 13. And we meet him early on. He's living in this slum that, he's there with his mom who has cancer. And they do say like very explicitly, like if they had money, she'd be able to pay for these treatments. It's like a fairly treatable kind of cancer.
I do love that dialogue where Leroy Ving Rhames' character is like, and that she's dying because they haven't removed the tumor and they could remove the tumor and then everything would be fine. And I'm like, that's convenient, but yes, continue.
Yeah, they don't.
It's very like fairy tale. It's very like Hansel and Gretel what like the movie as a whole.
Yeah,
is
it definitely
giving.
feels like two movies. Like there's the allegory part, and then once you get inside the walls of the house, it's like gonzo fucking crazy goofy
Home Alone is a great is a great way.
But we learn that she has cancer, and what we learn more is that Ving Rhames, who plays just kind of like a petty crook who knocked over the liquor store that I think is attached to the building, like at the bottom of the building, intercepts this letter from the landlords of the entire building who have been like pushing them out, raising rent, trying to get them out because they want to develop like fancy apartments and shit.
And everyone else, the whole premise is that everyone else, all the other families, anyone else who is living in any of the apartments in this building have already been pushed out.
Yeah, they're like the last
only
ones.
His family that's remaining in this building.
Which is like not that believable, but is like
nothing in this movie is believable.
Yeah, sure. But I feel like for the allegory, it works. Like that idea of like a holdout keeping like a greedy like slumlord.
It works for like the fairy tale. Like it is a fairy tale.
right. But at the same time, like a 12-year-old and his like dying mother being the like ones that are being like fuck you and holding up the whole process. Probably not. But he learns that they supposedly have a like cache of treasures in their house. And enlists Leroy is Ving Rhames, enlists the fool, the young boy, to help him rob the house. And that is our setup.
And we'll talk about all the great things he says, but Ving Rhames, this is peak Ving Rhames.
Oh my God.
He looks great. Every outfit he wears is
dope
killer.
Outfits. Yep.
I was so happy when he showed up. And I wish he was in more of the movie.
Oh my God. But he gets his money's worth. And I want to like my favorite line of his. Well, we'll get to it. But my favorite line is not one of the showier ones, but it made me stop the movie because I was laughing too hard at it. And I don't know why it struck me, but he has a bunch of great lines. Within a little bit, we meet our antagonists who are introduced as the Robesons, a married couple. And for our Twin Peaks fans out there, this is Ed and Nadine, the actors themselves, whose names I just blanked on entirely. Al, do you know those off the top of your head?
It's Everett McGill is daddy, and Wendy Roby is mommy.
Yes. And they exclusively call each other daddy and mommy, which is a great touch in this movie that makes it really, really creepy. But we see that they are like overbearing parents to this daughter they have named Alice, like kind of scary.
I just want to say about Alice. Did you recognize Alice from anything?
No, not at all. And I looked up the name later and I didn't recognize that either.
So I made it through several scenes and I was like, why do I recognize her? Why do I recognize her? She is in My So-Called Life.
Oh, as
like the naughty friend.
Okay. I didn't watch enough of that. I don't feel like for me to be able to recall it.
Yeah, the actress's name is AJ Langer. It's Rayanne is her character's name.
Damn.
But it was funny to see her in this role because it is a sharp contrast, where she's wearing like baby doll, very long dresses and like meek and very, whereas her role in My So-Called Life is, she's kind of like the wild child.
Bad girl. Yeah. And for those of you keeping count, that is 2 episodes in a row where Hal and I have compared a character in the movie to someone from My So-Called Life, because our last episode, I couldn't get over the fact that guy looked like Jared Leto from My So-Called Life. But yeah, so we see our first, like, this was, I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, that was creepy as fuck. This is going to be this whole movie, which is the mommy comes in and is like, where's your fork from dinner? And like being really too much about this fork, and she can't find it. And then a hand from the vent.
Ghostly gray hand.
Ghostly gray with like disgusting nails and all that, which I was a little let down because when we see the person behind that hand, it does not fit. But that is
he looks like a goofus.
He does look like a goofus. A goofus I love so much. I fucking love Roach.
A cartoon ghost child from like a Nickelodeon 90s show.
Yeah, he does.
Like his hair is like sticking up in the back,
It's great. But that image of the hand with the fork is so like spooky and weird.
Just that whole scene. I mean, I will say something that a positive thing I will say about this movie is that I could see like how this lays the groundwork for what Wes Craven does in Scream.
Yeah.
And how he is like
playing with the format. Yeah.
Yes. Playing with the format in a way that feels like he was leading to his masterpiece,
right.
Because that scene is so evocative of, like Mommy Dearest and other classic, even more explicitly horror, like Bad Mom, torturing you, screaming at you, locking you in a room, dressing you like a baby doll. And then it's in ways more sick and twisted, but also lighter than what it suggests it will be.
But I do like the like shift from being like presenting it almost even at the first like scare as like a spooky ghost story, and then the shift of the horror coming from mommy and daddy and not so much the thing that
flipping
you're told.
The script. No, it's not actually the ghost. So we see that scare, and then we kind of move towards Fool and Leroy and Spencer trying to move forward with their machinations to get inside the house, right?
Including dressing up like a little Boy Scout. That does not work at all. He was very cute. And then Spencer, who's like, we don't really get a lot of build up in him.
No,
he's like Leroy's
he's
friend.
In like one scene.
Yeah,
like Leroy's like, my guy Spencer's going to be with us. And then Spencer's driving the car. Like, and then Spencer goes in the house.
Like chemistry though. I wanted to see a little bit more of them together. But he goes in the house and he poses as the gas man to get inside. And then I think this was my guess for the line that Mike came in from the other room. But he goes in the house and he's in there too long, and Ving Rhames starts to get worried that he is trying to steal the money just for himself. And the kid, I don't even remember what the fool says, but he says like he's probably just doing something like innocent or whatever. And then Ving Rhames says, "Yeah, and maybe the president will make me secretary of pussy."
It is.
Is that the line that he came running in?
It's so good.
He has so many right in a row that are just like...
It's just like... It's like 2 scenes back to back where he just says nothing but insane things.
Right after that, they decide to go into the house and he crowbars the door, at which point he turns to a 12-year-old boy and goes, "I just popped this house's cherry," which is a fucking wild line. And it's Ving fucking Rhames saying it, which is even like crazier. Like the Arby's guy, like the Arby's voice is saying all this hilarious stuff.
But then the third thing he says was my personal favorite.
Do you want to say this one?
Sure.
Because these still is not my favorite one, which is coming up.
Because they're basically, as they try and bust into the house is like booby trapped, right? And a dog gets released after they pop open the door. And Fool has to use his wits to trap the dog. And they're inside the house, and Fool kind of expresses some doubts about like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Maybe we should be trying to get out of here. And Graham says, your 13th birthday is unlucky anyway. Too old to get tit, too young to get ass. Fucked either way. It's like, man, Wes Craven. I should look up who wrote this movie. I don't know that it was Wes Craven, but whoever wrote it was going off. Or maybe Ving Rhames just decided to say that.
Damn. I like to think they wrote it for Ving Rhames. And he's not even like Ving Rhames yet. You know, like Pulp Fiction is still 3 years away. So like, you know, he's just a character actor just fucking crushing these lines.
No, Wes Craven wrote it.
Did he? Okay. I was going to say Kevin, whatever his name is, that did Scream, like that. I'm forgetting his name now. But so once they're inside the house, there's like a series of doors they have to break through, and they find Spencer dead. R.I.P. Spencer, we hardly knew ye. But he does have a gold coin in his hand. So telling the Fool and Ving Rhames that there must be gold in here. So
there's gold in their house.
So we see them try to like find the gold, but then mommy and daddy come home and there is like a scramble to hide. And oh no, I forgot my favorite line, because there's one point where Ving Rhames is trying to like, it's after they found Spencer's dead body. Again, now I'm reading this and it's not nearly as funny just on the page as those previous 3 lines, but it made me laugh so hard when he's like lying on the ground trying to look through like a vent in the floor or something. The little kid comes and is like, Leroy, are you dead? And he says, just because man's lying down doesn't mean he's dead, which is Ving Rhames' delivery on the line is just so goddamn funny.
It is. It's also punctuated by the fact that the next time we see him laying down, he's dead.
He is dead. Yes. Yeah. But not before. They scramble to hide from mommy and daddy, and we get the funniest, in not an intentional way, bad electrocution acting. I love like when actors have to do like act like a way where like your body is out of your own control because it never works well. Like, have you ever have to see an actor play someone having like a seizure? Or a good one that I really love is bad throw up acting. I just love when like actors can't figure out how your body's supposed to go when you do these things that your body just does.
Involves involuntary action.
Yeah, but when they get electrocuted by touching the like rigged doorknob, there's so much like blah, 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 for like 5 seconds straight. Oh, this is a tangent. But I thought of, when I said that, I thought of my quintessential bad throw up acting movie.
Ooh.
And it is so quick. But it's a scene in the Michael Douglas movie Falling Down.
Interesting.
It's when he like first loses his shit in the burger joint. And he like pulls the gun out and screams at everybody. There is a woman, like an extra, who's so clearly...
It's not even fucking
No, it's not him.
Douglas.
It's so she so clearly just has like chewed up burger in her mouth. And then when he like does all this shit and everybody freaks out, she just goes like, and just like
I don't know. That is kind of how my dogs throw up.
Honestly, she looked like a dog throwing up in that scene.
You shouldn't call women dogs, Craig.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. Also, what I really like and I thought was fun through this whole point is that so mommy and daddy come home and basically like, I know we're going to call them mommy and daddy this whole time. This is the Mike Pence episode of the, but they kill Leroy. They shoot Leroy and then have a hilarious little dance over his body. But one little plot turn that I like is there's like 10 to 15 minutes where they don't realize that the Fool, the boy, was with Ving Rhames, Leroy. They think that like, oh, we got the guy who was breaking into our house. And there's like just a fun like 10 minutes or so in the movie where he's still in the house trying to navigate, and they don't realize. And then he meets Alice, the little daughter. What do you think of her? I mean, we've talked about her a little bit, but that's a character that I don't know, maybe thankless a little bit, not a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean, she's really just like a plot driver and like a foil.
Yeah, she
right
is.
For everyone else who's in the house at any given time and interacting with her. So I think that she does fine enough at what she exists there for, but she's not really I don't think she is not and is not intended to be like her own fully fleshed out motivation, you know.
They try a little bit at the end, but it doesn't quite get there. But she does explain kind of because I think at this point, the fool has seen Roach, the kid in the wall. He has seen something odd. Oh, yeah, because it drags Spencer's body out. So he knows there's like something else weird with the house. She then explains to him what that weirdness is. Do you want to say what she tells him?
Yes, all of the people living in the cellar were the prospective children of Mommy and Daddy. And who did not behave within what Mommy and Daddy expected, right? There were very strict requirements and were cast off to live in the cellar. We also learn at this point in time that Alice is not like the biological child or adoptive or any other formal. She's kidnapped, right? They're all kidnapped children of this couple. And then proceeds to be a part that I exclaimed out loud because Mommy and Daddy realized that the young Boy Scout that they saw or that Mommy saw knocking on the door earlier must be with or must have been with Vin Grimes with Leroy.
Oh, sorry. You were talking about the fool. I was talking about, think you were talking about Roach.
Yes. So then we see Daddy emerge from a door wearing a Gimp suit, which caused me to exclaim out loud as I watched the movie, because one, I was certainly not expecting this in a movie that ultimately feel, like I said, kind of like a child's twisted fairy tale. And two, because are there other 90s movies aside from this and Pulp Fiction that have people unexpectedly wearing Gimp suits?
I don't know, but I loved it. Like it's when because he doesn't just like show up on the screen wearing the Gimp suit. He is like angry, screaming
a
with
shotgun,
a shotgun, running down
shooting
the halls.
into walls.
This was the moment where I was like, well, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. I love this. I could not get enough of Everett McGill running through this house with a shotgun in a Gimp suit. It is cinema. It is my favorite. I loved it. I love this so much.
But he is trying to shoot Roach, one of the ghost boys. He doesn't know yet that Fool is in the house. They haven't realized that Leroy wasn't alone. And so apparently, as we learned from Alice, he's just like, Daddy is just like crazed and shooting into the walls because Roach has found a way from the basement into the pathways between the walls in the rest of the house. And apparently the other ghost children don't do that.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I will say there is some, what exactly is going on with them down in the cellar is a little ambiguous because when we see them eventually, they're like ghoulish. So like there is some sort of like physical transformation that has happened to them.
Whereas Roach is kind of like, again, like Casper. Like he's kind of like, I mean, he doesn't appear to be depicted in the way that Casper is as like a floating being, but I mean, like that's generally his spirit. Like he's
he
like
looks like
jovial,
a kid, whereas all the other ones look like fucked up little monsters living in the cellar. This was a plot point that I loved. I like when we just get those little clues, but they eventually find out that the fool is there. Because the cops, which one of several times where the cops just like bungle up the whole thing that they're like basically called to come help. And they're just like, they fucking not only don't help, but make it worse. Because the cops come and be like, we got some calls, something going on. And this van's been out here, Leroy's van. And they're like, and obviously Mommy and Daddy lie. But then when the cops leave, she goes in the van and she sees the little Boy Scout uniform and realizes, oh shit, that little kid was a part of this. He must still be in there. And then is where we get everything cutting loose. We're gonna get more Gimp action in a little bit, but we do get a thing that
not more Gimp action.
We do get a thing that I rewound to 4 to 5 times and rewatched. Normally, I don't think animal violence in movies is all that funny. But when he's running away from the dog and it tries to get him through the door and he punches it just square in the face and it makes like the classic like punch on flesh noise. There's not a funnier moment in this movie than him punching that dog in the face.
In the 90s.
You just punch dogs.
Sure.
There's no problem.
I was
just
going to
punch
say,
them.
children terrorized by dogs, right? Like Sandlot, this,
Cujo.
the live the live action Dennis the Menace.
Damn. People fucking hated dogs in the 90s. What was the deal? But he punches that dog. It is so funny to me. I can't. Just the like.
Well, it's like comic book violence.
Yeah. It's comic booky, and the sound effect with it is really, really funny. Then finally, the Fool and Roach link up, and Roach, we learn, has had his fucking tongue cut out for talking back because he was one of the prospective sons of mommy and daddy. And he shows us his real gross, disgusting tongue. And then we see daddy. They're like, okay, this movie, mommy and daddy are fucked up. This whole movie is weird. What if he's just also a cannibal and is just eating?
That's what I mean. Like,
it's
why
awesome.
not? Why not? Wes Craven was like literally everything.
I love it.
Just throw it off. It's like the whole book of fairy tales.
I want to like. I know like the movie is silly and we've commented on that, but I do want to once again. I had so much fun watching this movie, like especially this time. I don't know what it was because the first time I remember feeling like, okay, that was weird. That was definitely not what I expect. I liked it. But this time it was just like, I don't know, knowing what it was, it was just every scene. I was like, I'm in on this. I'm in 100%. I love it all. Like I'm buying into it.
Yeah,
I love this.
I would be open to watching it again. Not immediately, but I would be open to watching it again. And I could see it having that effect because again, I walked in basically knowing nothing aside from like landlords, evil landlords or something. So if I had walked in knowing like it's a horror comedy that is functionally a children's adventure fairy tale situation, I think I might have had a different journey.
I also remember the first time we watched this. I remember my wife and I were recently married, and we moved in to this townhouse with another couple that were like about to get married, but we're all around the same age, and like they were just not movie people, and we were, and I was like, I think I rented it from old like Video 21, and I was like, y'all gotta come over here. We're gonna watch this fucked up movie. Like I've never seen this. I remember like really building it up to them. And then I do remember like a palpable sense of disappointment in them when they were like, okay, well, thanks for having us over. They're like, that was a gone movie. But I do remember like them feeling like that was not quite what you made it out to be. And I was like, well, listen, I also didn't know what it was.
It's like thinking you're going to watch Halloween and someone plays Halloween Town.
Yeah. Like that.
Which like, as someone who enjoys Halloween Town just fine.
I will say.
Yeah, disparate expectations.
We see, so at this point, there's like a lot, we probably don't have to go into every single one, but there's a lot of like the Home Alone traps of chasing the fool in and out of the house and through walls and whatnot. And then.
And him parkouring.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The stairs. The stair slide thing.
The stair slide is pretty cool.
Damn,
I mean,
that.
Not as a mechanism to trap ghoul children in a basement, but just
as like
in a movie.
As a way to get down to your cellar would be preferable.
Sounds like a great way to need back surgery by age 40.
And then Roach fucking dies. And I was, I fucking love Roach. I was devastated. I did not remember that he died, and he dies being a hero and saving the fool. And then we get more hilarious dog violence. Listen.
Subtitle.
I honestly
more hilarious
usually hate when animals are subjected to violence in movies. But all the times it happens in this movie are so funny that first when the fool punches him, and then so Everett McGill, is he back in the Gimp suit at this point when he does this? I don't remember.
I think so. He releases the dog into the walls.
Into the walls, yeah, to like chase the fool. And then it has added a bayonet to the end of his, I don't know if it's still the shotgun or whatever, but he's put a bayonet on it and he's like, oh, he's in the wall. Let me just start stabbing the wall. And then stabs his dog on accident. And that's not the funny part. I know I just said that was hilarious. The funny part is when mommy comes in and she's like, what are you doing? And he does a second hilarious dance because he's so excited because he thinks he's killed this little 12-year-old. And then just the scene going from him doing his little dance to like tearing open the wall and realizing not only did he get away, but I just bayoneted my dog.
And I had to rip up my wall.
And I ripped up my wall. Well, they didn't seem too invested in those walls, to be honest. But yeah, just that like unsung hero, Everett McGill and Roby. I can't remember her first name.
Wendy.
Wendy Roby. They're really, really fucking good in this. It's
I like her performance more than his. His feels like purely cartoonish, whereas I feel like she is channeling some of that again, like Mommy Dearest
energy.
Like
she
is serious within the confines. Like she is believable within the universe that is presented, as opposed to like being a joke inside of the universe where he is like cartoonishly stupid.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the fool does escape and
with some gold.
Does he have it at that point?
Yes.
Oh, how much does he take? I don't remember
He takes the gold, then he goes back because he promised Alice and the ghost children that he'd liberate them.
Yeah. Does he find the Scrooge McDuck room before he leaves?
Yes.
Oh shit! For some reason, I had that in my memory that he didn't find that until he comes back. Yes, because that's the whole thing. Is
when he goes back to the apartment and is with his grandpa. His grandpa is like, you got enough gold to pay your rent for 10 years.
Yes. And by the way, that married couple are brother and sister.
Yeah, and also get mom's tumor excised.
Yes.
Simple
procedure.
And Fool is, so sweet and pure of heart. He's like, I promise I would liberate the ghost children. I must go back.
And he does. And I do like how the plot unfolds. It is like, I do see like what, you're saying about the like two different ideas of like, because like while all this is happening with the ghost children, his sister has this plan to basically have the tenants of the neighborhood kind of storm back. And at one point, like it's just her knocking on the door to like give the fool support. And then there's a point where all of the people who have been evicted by the slumlords are like gathering behind them. And I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but like the thing that like always makes me emotional in movies is it's really stupid, but it's like people coming together for a common good.
Do something.
Yeah, for like a common like goal or whatever. So the second time, I legit was like on the verge of tears multiple times in this stupid movie. Roach dies, very sad to me. And then when she knocks on the door and they come back again and all the people from the neighborhood are like, fuck you, Robesons, and they're all there. I was like, yes, we got them.
And actually, you're right. That's when he discovers the full room of gold.
Okay.
Is when all of the people...
before he gets like a satchel or something.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we get like a Gimp Daddy comes back. We get Daddy in the Gimp suit again, which we love.
Not the Gimp Daddy.
I will say, like, it does seem like they couldn't decide on death scenes for a couple of them. So they're like, we're going to kill them several times. Like, we're going to have several moments where like they should have been dead. And we're going to keep having them like re-encounter the ghost children.
The full revenge fantasy.
But we do see the revenge fantasy play out where Alice like stabs mommy and then the like ghost seller children descend on her. And then the fool just straight up fucking blows up Daddy, which was gutsy because the whole time I was like, you're too close to that bomb. You should back up some, the fool. But
it works.
It does
if
work.
You're in a fairy tale.
It does work. And we kind of end by seeing the like crowd of all the people like freshly like liberated from these slumlords that they've annihilated. And then an image that I love is just all the like unable to speak because they've been living in a cellar and probably had their tongues cut out. And they look like ghouls just like in the crowd now. Like,
Wes Craven imagines a world in which people of all skin colors, including gray,
or whatever,
can take part in an open, free, and housed society.
I just love that. Like, it made me feel like that. Like, remember when they tried to make those Geico cavemen into like a TV show where like they just had normal lives?
Unfortunately,
I was like, that's gonna be the sequel. It's just the ghoul children like that look like Geico cavemen having to be like, "Hello, I'm here to apply for this job," because they just like go out into the world. But yeah, that is Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. Before we go, though, you know how we like to make lists and rankings. Do we want to list our favorite Wes Cravens?
Yes.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. For my, I'll go in reverse order. For 3, I'm going to say Scream 2.
Hell yes.
A plasty blast, and just Jada Pinkett Smith alone. Quite a delight. But because the road had already been paved, it's not forging an entirely new path.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to list Scream above it. Just, I think unmatchable. I think it's one of those scenarios where by being such a pioneer, you've created such an imprint that can basically never be matched. I mean, it is the perfect blend. That movie still scares me. I've seen it fucking 25 times or whatever. But when I watch it, around Halloween or whatever, there's still parts where I go, ah.
Yeah, I just watched it recently again myself. And yeah, and you know what's really, well, we'll get to it because we're going to talk about it maybe again in a second.
Oh, okay.
Also, what I like about Scream 2 is how it is like structurally so similar to Scream, but still feels so different and fresh and like keeps you guessing. It still has a really good twist in it that like when you compare them A to B, the twists are pretty similar, like the misdirections and all that, but just great. Yeah. Yeah.
It's still an enjoyable ride. And then my number 1 has to be, it's my favorite of, I would say, like the classic American series, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Hell yeah.
I mean, to me, unmatched. It is the perfect blend, in my opinion, of practical effects and like comedic moments without outright being horror comedy. Freddy Krueger is a genius. I love someone that has a lot of fucked up sleep problems. The idea of a villain that comes at you through your sleep. Though I will say, I'm going to take this opportunity to get on my soapbox for a second.
Yes, please.
People should stop getting Freddy Krueger tattoos. I don't understand why people do that. That man's a pedophile.
He is.
Why would you get a pedophile tattooed on you?
Yeah. Have you ever heard that Kumail Nanjiani joke?
No. Am I unintentionally stealing a Kumail joke?
Not quite, but it's around the same premise where he talks about when the Jackie Earle Haley Nightmare on Elm Street came out, that there was a series of like action figures they made, and one is of Freddy Krueger before he is burned. So Kumail's like, oh, that's just an action figure of a pedophile. That's a pedophile action figure. Okay, so mine, and I always cheat when we do these lists because I always feel like I knew for some reason that Nightmare on Elm Street was going to be up there for you. Well, first let me say my number 3, and honestly, if I was going to do this list, People Under the Stairs would probably be in these top 3 somewhere. But since we just talked about it so long, I didn't include it. But number 3 is the first movie that like I remember watching when I was younger that felt like dangerous and fucked up and weird and like scary in ways that I couldn't quantify, which is The Hills Have Eyes. I love the grimy shit, like the 70s.
Yeah, we differ. This is a place where we differ.
Yeah.
And
it's like, because there's like obviously some sexual violence in it and things that I don't.
I mean, it's not even that. I just don't like the way it looks, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. It is grimy as shit. But I do love just like, I don't know. I think I've said this before, but like stuff that's just fucking weird and I can't explain why and I can't put my finger on it and I can't, that is the shit that freaks me out the most. I always use the example, but in The Shining, when Wendy is like running around and she turns a corner and there's the man in the dog costume giving a blowjob to like a senator or something or whatever he's supposed to be.
The uncanny.
Just like, what the fuck? Why? Like, I can't like, and The Hills Have Eyes was like one of the first times where I was like, God damn, this is like scaring me in ways that I can't even quantify. But my number 2 is the one that I was cheating on a little bit because I thought how it was going to say Nightmare on Elm Street and I didn't want to repeat too much. So I'm going to give it up for, let's just say this probably was Nightmare on Elm Street in my real 2 spot, but I'm going to go with my second favorite of the Nightmare movies, which is New Nightmare.
You want to hear something crazy? This is the only Nightmare on Elm Street film I have not seen.
Ooh, you should see it because I think you'd like it. It's
maybe
meta and like the premise, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's basically like, for those that don't know, it's like takes place in our world where Nightmare on Elm Street is just a movie. And Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp play themselves, who then open themselves up to Freddy's haunting or whatever. And my number 1 is Scream. Yes, definitely the favorite, the masterpiece. And I will say this is like a more personal one to me as well, because so when my wife and I first started dating and got married, like, she grew up like, we both grew up in a church that was very sheltered and didn't shunned a lot of any like art that was weird or anything. So horror was like not in the conversation. We don't watch that. We're good little church kids. And Jess like always was like never into horror at all, ever. Was always terrified by it. And then one day, like it was maybe just a couple months after we got married, I was watching Scream and something about it was like, to Jess was like, this is interesting. And she sat down and watched the whole thing with me. And then when we finished it, she was like, there's more of these, right? And like in a day we watched, up till then there was only 3 because the 4th one was about to come out. And honest to God, ever since that day, like she has had a more insatiable horror appetite than I have. And
it was the key.
It really was. Like, that sounds so corny, but like literally she had a like revulsion to horror. She was just like, I don't like it. I don't think I like it. I don't watch it, but I don't think I like it. And then something about Scream like made her like realize how fun it can be and how silly and everything. So like, yeah, Scream's awesome. And I also have this weird, like little emotional, sentimental spot for it as well.
That's very sweet. And again, I think that how successful it is at being both meta and also legitimately scary.
Yeah.
And how it, again, like flipped the script in ways that it created such a blueprint that everything is always, that is attempting to be like it, is always going to be reflective of it. Like it will 100%. Always evoke it.
And I think
so. I think that makes sense as like a pathway into horror.
Yeah. And more than anything, like it, I think is just fucking fun, which at its core, like that's why I like horror movies. They're fun. Like even the ones that aren't meta or aren't like horror comedy, they're fun. And I think Scream is just such a good like representation of like how fun a horror movie can be. So yeah, I love it.
Shouts out to Wes Craven.
Shouts out.
And also like shouts out to Wes Craven for making things that like I just, even though honestly my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street,
the Jackie Earle Haley one.
My favorite Nightmare on Elm Street, oh my God, films, whatever, are not directed by him. His fingerprint is all over them.
Yeah, it's such like a singular like idea and vision that any sequels are going to obviously owe everything to like his weirdo vision from the beginning.
Yes. Also, I want to give a very brief shout out to
please.
It's not a great movie. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but to Red Eye.
Yeah, that is a good one.
It is fun and thrilling and tense. And I'm a big Cillian Murphy lover.
Hell yeah.
So, and it's fun to see him break bad.
Did I just see that I feel like I just read news about him being in something that was very interesting. And now I can't remember what it was.
He has such sad eyes.
He does. Yeah, he does.
Also, I need to rewatch that movie apparently because evidently Brian Cox is in it, which I fully
In Red Eye?
I do not remember at all. You know what will forever be imprinted on my brain? Her stabbing him in the neck, him being Cillian Murphy with a pen.
Yep. I
is
remember
like
that as well.
the
I don't remember
emblazoned
much.
image in my brain from seeing this would have been in middle school.
Damn, there was like 2000s had a lot of like mid-budget,
Bring back
fun,
the mid-budget
like, thriller. Yeah, for real. Because now, like everything, Red Eye, great mid-budget thrill ride.
And like, can you imagine Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy being
Oh my god, two hot
thriller?
people like being
Thriller
hot and
film.
scary to each other. That's great. We love it. But yeah, do we have anything else to add to The People Under the Stairs?
We do not, or I do not, rather. I will say I'm excited I'm going to watch Candyman after this to prep for our next episode.
Yeah.
And I think that either intentionally, I don't know if it was intentional in your parts, because these 3 films, but kind of continuing this theme of like gentrification and housing and the horrors inherent within. I'm enjoying exploring that.
Yeah. Been fun. Well, with that, we will get y'all on the next one when we watch Candyman 2021 version.
Bye-bye.
Bye.